The Attorney General's testimony was consistent and truthful, and calls for special counsels, which seem to be a regular occurrence, do not change that fact.
His number 2 and number 3 were intimately involved. He had to know more about Fast and Furious than I learned about it a couple weeks ago.
And we're back with our panel talking about Operation Fast and Furious. Each new day brings new revelations. Let's talk about it with Steve, AB, and Charles. Steve, how much do you think the Attorney General knew? Do you think he was accurate when he testified in Congress? And do you think that the White House is ever going to agree to a special prosecutor
There
here?
is no question that he was not accurate when he testified in front of Congress. We don't know exactly how much he knew and when he knew it, but we do know that there is a series of memos. There's written communication that suggests he knew this as early as July 2010. There was one document out that maybe made it March 2010. But these are, the White House is trying to tamp this down and say, look, these are small things. His testimony wasn't inconsistent. His testimony was not only inconsistent, it directly contradicted what this paper trail suggests. And the idea that this wasn't a big deal, that these things that were addressed to Eric Holder weren't a big deal, is simply false. There's a November 2010 memo that was written by Assistant Attorney General Lanny Brewer that lists as significant recent events a discussion about Operation Fast and Furious and gives details about that. This is the Assistant Attorney General of the United States reporting to the Attorney General, calling this significant in his memo. There's no question that Eric Holder knew about this before he said he did, and his testimony is simply false.
AB, how long do you think that the administration can hold off on something like a special prosecutor? At what point do they reconsider keeping Eric Holder as Attorney General, or do you think they're going to dig in their heels and stand with him?
Well, I think they would like to dig in their heels and stand with him, and I think he's popular with Team Obama, and I think they've done a lot to protect him thus far. I think that it's clear that the Republicans are going to keep up the pressure. The investigation will broaden. Hearings will continue. This is going to be very difficult to distract from. And so what I think the president will find is that this becomes just too much of an elephant, and he can't get out across the countryside or even here in Washington and keep to this message as he campaigns for re-election about jobs and the economy and trying to paint this contrast with the Republicans. This is going to become too big, and it'll be a huge distraction for him. At some point, I think that his dismissal is more likely than a special prosecutor, but I don't know exactly what their thinking is at this point on that. I think that you see early attempts to try to defend him, and Steve is right. We don't know if he perjured himself, but we know that his testimony has not actually been consistent.
Well, Charles, I mean, the Attorney General is a very intelligent man. I mean, do you think that he was adequate in his answers, or do you think they will come back to haunt him at some point?
Look, I think his one defense is inadequacy, and there's a history here. Remember, I think it had to do with the Arizona law that he opposed before Congress, and he was asked if he'd read it. And he said no, and it's not a long bill. So that was a rather startling admission of incompetence. So perhaps incompetence will be his defense. Will say, yes, I got the memos, but I never read them. The same way I never read the Arizona law. But it is clear that what he said, I think it was on the 3rd of May before Congress under oath, is false. Now, in which he was asked, do you know about Fast and Furious? And he said no, or at least not until a few weeks ago. The defense that Justice is now putting up, that one of its spokesmen said, I think it was today, that he was unaware, he was speaking about the irregularities in the program. But that is not the question that was asked of him. He was asked about whether he knew anything about the program. His answer was no. It clearly isn't so. So I think in the end he will have to claim incompetence, hadn't read it, hadn't remembered. You get a lot of memos as Attorney General, you might skim some. But it's a hell of a defense if you're the Attorney General of the United States and you're a repeat offender on the inadequacy charge.
Well, and we have the underlying issue, but now we have the effort to, as you said, I think, AB, tamp it down by the White House. This is an administration that pledged more transparency than ever before. So do you think their issue then becomes, addressing it after it's happened versus the underlying issue itself?
I think this whole transparency thing is no longer, a top goal of the Obama administration. They're just trying to survive the week. Yeah. But I do think that if you combine, the investigation into Solyndra with this parallel investigation, it's going to become this huge drumbeat, and they're going to be asked day and night for documents and, depositions and testimony and all sorts of things. It becomes very, very taxing for them, not only politically, but just in terms of their time and their resources as they try, like I said, to stick to one message about the economy. I do think at some point they're going to begin to cut bait, but right now I do see a real attempt for them to try at least to prove to Eric Holder that they are coming to his defense.
Well, look, and if you look at the tactics they're using, you have Cheryl Atkinson from CBS News, who's done terrific reporting on this, tell Laura Ingraham yesterday on her radio show that she was screamed at by White House press officials and Justice Department press officials who were questioning her reportorial abilities and suggesting that she was out of it and nobody understood what she was saying. She was a lone reporter on this. She's in fact done very good reporting on this and has turned up a lot of these documents that have proven so damaging to the White House. So, again, you see a pattern from the Obama White House. They don't like something and they call the reporter and scream at the reporter, or they try to get Ford to pull an ad. I mean, this is a White House that is now seeking to intimidate the people that it disagrees with.
All right, this story is far from over. Panel, thank you very much. That's it for the panel, but please stay tuned.